At my 20th birthday party, the real heiress Fiona James appeared with a DNA report. My adoptive mother immediately let go of my hand as if discarding a dirty rag. My fiancé Simon Powell publicly announced, "The engagement is off. I won't marry a woman of unknown origins." My adoptive father then handed me a list, saying, "Jenny, pay back the $30 million the James family spent on you." The gazes of the full hall of guests pricked me like needles. The light from the crystal chandelier spilled over my face, devoid of any warmth. Around me were the clinking of champagne glasses, the whispers of men and women, and Mrs. James's sharp accusations, "You fraud, you've been eating and drinking in our house for 18 years without paying a cent." My gaze went past the nominal parents before me and settled on the girl beside them, Fiona James. Her eyes were red and swollen. Like a frightened rabbit, beside her stood Simon Powell, the man who had recently claimed to be my fiancé, now reaching out to wrap his arm around her shoulder in an intimate gesture. "Jenny, you must pay the price for your intrusion." Simon Powell's voice was cold and stern, spoken from a position of superiority. My gaze finally shifted. I lifted my eyes, and a translucent AR interface visible only to me appeared on my retina. On the interface, 3 names were flickering. James Group, Information Entropy, 89.7, Chaos, Powell Holdings. Information Entropy, 76.4, Decline, Jenny, Information Entropy, 0.1, Exponential Growth. I closed the interface. 18 years of upbringing. The James family demanded I repay them with $30 million. They publicly announced that I, Jenny, was the fake heiress who had usurped another's place, and Fiona James was their biological daughter who had been lost outside. Today is my birthday banquet, and also my judgment day. All the guests were watching as if it were a good show, waiting for me to break down, cry, and beg on my knees. I simply took out my phone and opened an app. The white light from the screen illuminated my calm face. I turned the phone screen toward Mr. James, where the number displayed was 2998000, just 20,000 short. "I'll make it up tomorrow." My voice wasn't loud, but it made all the noise in the banquet hall pause for a moment. Mr. James's face turned from flushed to ashen. He probably never imagined that a foster daughter, who in his eyes only knew how to spend money, could come up with this amount, $30 million to buy out 18 years of upbringing. I withdrew my phone and glanced at him and Mrs. James beside him. "Mr. James, from a business perspective, the annualized return on your investment is negative. Congratulations, you've made the worst deal in history." After saying this, I took off the expensive evening gown I was wearing and casually tossed it on the floor. It was from a high-end designer brand, bought by the James family to maintain appearances. Now, it has nothing to do with the James family anymore. I was only wearing the inner white silk shirt and trousers, turned around, and walked towards the banquet hall door. Behind me, there was a deathly silence, followed by even more intense discussions. I didn't look back. Walking out of the gilded door of James' house, the evening breeze carried a chill. I took a deep breath, not to feel sentimental, but to confirming freedom. It has been 3 days since I went from being Dr. Jenny in finance to being the cannon fodder Jenny in a novel. 3 days was enough for me to understand the situation and also enough to earn my first sum of money. That money was made by using the initial credit from the Information Entropy Observer, in my mind, leveraging it 50 times on a small company in the U.S. stock market that was about to release positive news. Clean and efficient. A taxi stopped in front of me. "Where to, miss?" "LC University, South Gate." There was a single apartment I had rented long ago. The war that belongs to Jenny has only just begun. The taxi stopped at the south gate of LC University. I paid the fare and walked into a quiet alley. At the end of the alley stood an inconspicuous 6-story apartment building with no elevator. My new home is on the 5th floor. 1 bedroom, 1 living room, 30 square meters, monthly rent $2,000. The furniture is secondhand, but very clean. Over the past 3 days, aside from making money, I only did this one thing, closing the door. I shut out the extravagant world behind me. I took out a brand new laptop from my backpack, turned it on, and connected to the pre-prepared network. The screen lit up, instantly filling the entire desktop with dense candlestick charts and data streams. This is the world that makes me feel at ease. My phone vibrated. It was a bank notification. Account balance, 2998150.23. The final payment from that leveraged trade had arrived. I calmly transferred the full $30 million into a new account. This was the money I needed to return to the James family tomorrow, the remaining $15,000. This is my startup capital. Too little. I opened the scanning interface of the Information Entropy Observer and began screening tens of thousands of stocks in the world's major financial markets. Conditions set. Information entropy below 10, price below $1. The lower the entropy, the more certain the information. What I'm looking for is prey that is about to undergo drastic changes but has not yet been detected by the market. A few seconds later, only one code remained on the screen, NNCUS, Nolan Communications, Information Entropy, 3.2. This is a tech company on the verge of bankruptcy, with its stock price hovering around $0.50 for years, labeled by Wall Street as electronic junk. Such a low entropy value suggests only two possibilities. Either it will be delisted tomorrow, and all information will fall into silence. Either there is huge, certain positive news about to ignite it. I placed my finger on the touchpad and pulled up all the public information on Nolan Communications, financial reports, news, executive changes, patent applications. 10 minutes later, I found a clue, a patent transfer announcement from last month. Nolan Communications transferred a foundational technology patent related to 5G signal enhancement to a shell company named Skyline Capital, and just yesterday, the tech giant, Quantum Group, announced the successful development of a breakthrough 5G signal technology. I smiled. This is not RD, it's an acquisition. To avoid antitrust scrutiny, Quantum Group quietly completed the acquisition of Nolan Communications core technology through the shell company, Skyline Capital. After the acquisition, the next step will inevitably be a full merger. The market is not yet aware of this, but my Information Entropy Observer saw it. It saw the imminent, certain surge. I converted all of my remaining $15,000 into dollars and, through an overseas brokerage platform I was already familiar with before crossing over, bought Nolan Communications stock with all of it. Then, I applied the maximum leverage allowed by the platform, 100 times. On the computer screen, the value of my holdings had turned into over $200,000. If Nolan Communications stock price fluctuates even slightly tomorrow, I could be liquidated in an instant, but I remained calm. This is not gambling. I just saw the correct answer in advance. I turned off the computer and went to take a shower. When I stepped out of the bathroom, there was an unread text message on my phone, from Simon Powell. Jenny, don't act like a child. Come back and apologize to Fiona, and I can pretend this never happened. I looked at this message and found it somewhat amusing. The gap between us isn't wealth, but mindset. He's still concerned about who is worthy of him, while I only care whether the K-line chart will hit the limit up tomorrow. I deleted the message and dragged Simon Powell's number into the blacklist. Then, I went to bed and slept. Tomorrow will be a busy day. Early the next morning, I was woken up by the alarm clock. The overnight trading session for U.S. stocks is about to begin. I didn't rush to turn on the computer. Instead, I first cooked myself a bowl of frozen dumplings. After finishing my meal, I leisurely sat down at the desk. On the computer screen, Nolan Communications stock price remained stagnant at $0.51. There were still 10 minutes until the U.S. stock market opened. I made a cup of instant coffee and then dialed a number. Hello, is this Chaoyang Law Firm? I need to hire a lawyer to handle a debt repayment matter. On the other end of the phone, a professional customer service representative was recording my request. All right, ma'am, may I ask the amount involved? 30 million RMB, I said. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, as if confirming whether they had heard correctly. All right, ma'am, we will immediately assign a top-tier lawyer to follow up for you. May I ask for your name? Jenny. The moment I spoke my name, the K-line chart on the computer screen moved. A green vertical line shot up abruptly without any warning. $0.60, $0.80, $1.20. Trading volume surged instantly, with countless buy orders flooding in like crazy. I know, Quantum Group's acquisition announcement has been released. The corners of my mouth lifted slightly. Just 1 minute after the market opened, Nolan Communications stock price had already tripled, surging to $1.50. Moreover, there was no sign of the upward trend slowing down. In my account, the position worth over $200,000 had already skyrocketed to nearly $1 million. This is the power of information asymmetry. I didn't sell. I know, this is just the beginning. The fermentation of the merger news will turn this junk stock into the hottest star on Wall Street within a few days. On the other end of the phone, the law firm's customer service was still confirming the information. Miss Jenny, we have arranged for attorney David to assist you. He will contact you immediately. Excellent. After hanging up the phone, I encrypted and packaged the electronic proof of the $30 million debt and James' family's account information, which I had prepared earlier, and sent it to the law firm's public email. After completing all this, the stock price of Noalon Communications had already surged past $3. My account assets exceeded $3 million. I still did not make a move. My goal is not this small amount of money. What I want is to use this battle to completely establish my reputation. The phone rang, showing an unfamiliar number. Hello, Miss Jenny, I am Lawyer David. A steady male voice came through. Hello. Lawyer David, I have received your commission and the documents. Repaying the $30 million debt is not a problem. However, since the other party is the James Group, I need to confirm with you. Are you prepared with the full amount? His caution was understandable. I turned my computer screen toward the phone camera, letting him take a look at my stock account. I believe funding should not be an issue. The phone was silent for a full 10 seconds. I understand, Miss Jenny. I'll take care of it right away. I guarantee that by 5 p.m. today, the bill with your signature and the proof of the $30 million remittance will be delivered to the desk of Bob James, chairman of the James Group. Lawyer David's voice carried a hint of barely concealed excitement and reverence. He was a smart man. He knew he was witnessing the beginning of a legend. Good. I turned off the camera. Also, help me register a company. A company? What should it be called? I thought for a moment. Looking at the constantly flickering Greek letter, sigma, on the screen, which represented information entropy. Let's call it entropy, I said. Entropy Capital. The next 3 days, I lived a very regular life. Every day, I got up, watched the stock market, ate, and slept. Nolan Communications stock price soared like a rocket. On the first day, the closing price was $5.08. The next day, it broke through $15. On the third day, at the peak of market sentiment, the stock price reached an astonishing $25.3. In just 3 days, it had multiplied 50-fold. My account assets had snowballed from the initial $2,000 to over $10 million, converted to RMB. That's more than 70 million. At the moment the stock price peaked, I liquidated all my positions, without the slightest hesitation. The Information Entropy Observer showed that the entropy value of Noalon Communications had surged from 3.2 to 75. This indicated that its information had become chaotic, the battle between bulls and bears had intensified, and the risk had increased dramatically. For me, this feast was over. I closed the trading software and let out a long sigh of relief. First pot of gold, secured, more than I had anticipated. The phone on the desk hasn't stopped ringing since yesterday. There were calls from various investment firms, people claiming to be headhunters, and even a few unfamiliar international numbers. They all want to know who the mysterious account, Z, is, the one that precisely bought the dip, leveraged 100-fold, and made tens of millions of dollars in the Nolan Communications battle. I didn't answer any of them. A true hunter always remains hidden in the shadows. In the afternoon, Lawyer David called. Ms. Jenny, Entropy Capital Management Co., Ltd., has been successfully registered. You are the sole legal representative and shareholder. Well done. Additionally, the money from the James family has been received. Mr. Bob James's expression didn't look too good, Lawyer David said with a hint of amusement in his tone. The upper-class circles in LC City are going wild with the news. They're saying the fake heiress the James family raised for 18 years is a hidden stock market prodigy. Stock market prodigy, I scoffed. I am not a god. I can only see entropy. Miss Jenny, there's one more thing. Lawyer David's tone turned serious. I've received word that the James and Powell families have used some connections. You may no longer be able to open institutional accounts for A shares in any formal financial institutions in the country. Blocked. It came so quickly. Bob James and Simon Powell are trying to nip me in the bud. They think that by blocking the A share market channel, I'll be cut off at the source. Naive, I understand. My voice showed no emotion. Miss Jenny, aren't you worried? This way, your capital will have no room to maneuver domestically. Lawyer David, I said calmly, the earth is round, and capital is fluid. When one door closes here, countless windows open for me on the other side of the world. The real battlefield was never here. After hanging up the phone, I opened my computer and began searching for the other 3 names. The first one, Kevin, former Star Fund manager of Seagull Fund. 3 years ago, due to an aggressive leveraged operation that failed in going long on crude oil futures, the fund was liquidated, resulting in personal debt of 80 million. Since then, he has disappeared from the public eye. The second one, Linda, former chief actuary of Anshin Insurance, 2 years ago, after blowing the whistle on financial fraud by the company's top executives. She was blacklisted across the industry and has been unable to find a job ever since. The third one, John, a top programmer who only exists in online legends, codenamed Ghost. It is said that he suffers from severe social anxiety, and the last time he appeared in public was at a geek competition 5 years ago. Everyone considered them losers, trash, good-for-nothings, but in my Information Entropy Observer, behind the names of these 3 individuals, there is an extremely low entropy value. Kevin, Information Entropy, 8.1, Potential, Explosive Growth. Linda, Information Entropy, 7.5, Potential, Structurally Stable. John, Information Entropy, 5.4, Potential, Exponential Expansion. They are not losers, they are diamonds in the rough, geniuses unjustly crushed by their era, and I need a team, a league of losers, powerful enough to disrupt Wall Street. My fingers tapped on the keyboard, and an email was sent. The recipient was Kevin's publicly listed, long-forgotten email address, with a debt of 80 million. Do you want to hide in the shadows for a lifetime? Or do you want to turn it into 800 million in 3 months? I'm Jenny from Entropy Capital. If you have the guts, let's talk tomorrow at 3 p.m. at the West City Scrapyard. West City Scrapyard. The air was filled with the strange smell of rust and engine oil mixed together. Piles of scrapped cars, like steel tombs, were stacked high. I arrived 10 minutes before the scheduled time. I leaned against a rusty bus, waiting quietly. At exactly 3 in the afternoon, a figure appeared at the entrance of the scrapyard. The man was tall but slightly hunched. He wore a faded jacket, had a stubbly beard, and his eyes were filled with caution and exhaustion. He is Kevin. 3 years ago, he was the youngest and most dazzling fund manager in LC City. Everyone called him God Kevin. 3 years later, he was just a failure crushed by 80 million in debt. He saw me and froze for a moment. Probably didn't expect that the person who sent him that arrogant email would be such a young girl. Are you Jenny? His voice was hoarse, carrying a hint of uncertainty. That's me. I nodded. He took a few steps closer and stopped in front of me. His gaze swept over me, filled with doubt. 800 million, little girl. Do you have any idea what 800 million means? Do you know how much debt I'm in? Are you just messing with me? 8 million. I calmly stated the figure. With compound interest, it's now about 9.2 million. Did I calculate correctly? Kevin's pupils suddenly contracted. You investigated me. Understanding my business partners is basic courtesy, I said, looking directly into his eyes. Kevin, 3 years ago, you went long on crude oil futures. Your judgment wasn't wrong. That week, the OPEC meeting did reach a production cut agreement. Oil prices should have soared. His body trembled slightly, his fists unconsciously clenching. That was the eternal pain in his heart. But you lost, I continued, because just 1 hour before the agreement was announced, Wall Street's Great Shark Capital, in collaboration with several oil giants, launched a lightning-fast short attack using a forged production increase memorandum. Within 30 minutes, they crashed the market, closed their positions, and exited. By the time you realized what was happening, your account had already blown up. All of this was the truth I uncovered by using the Information Entropy Observer to trace back the data flow from that year and analyze it. Kevin's face turned deathly pale. He stared at me intently, as if looking at a monster. How could you possibly know these things? How I know isn't important. I took a bank card out of my pocket and handed it to him. What matters is, do you want revenge? He didn't answer. There's 10 million in this card, I said. This is the operating capital for Entropy Capital. You'll be the one managing it. Kevin laughed, a laugh filled with self-mockery and bitterness. 10 million, Miss Jenny, do you know how much I lost when my position was liquidated? It was 3 billion. You're giving me 10 million to fight against those ruthless giants who devour people without spitting out the bones. That's not even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. I'm not asking you to confront them head-on, I said. Taking back the bank card, what I want you to do is something else. I took out my phone and pulled up the information of a stock, JS Mining, a listed company on the A-share market. Its main business is rare earth mining. The current stock price is $12. I want you, within the next month, to use this 10 million to drive it to delisting for me. Kevin frowned tightly, glanced at the stock information, and immediately shook his head. Impossible. JS Mining is controlled by the Powell family behind the scenes. You must know Simon Powell, right? Their market support funds are at least $2 billion, trying to short it with $10 million. It won't even make a splash. Who said I'm going to short it? I smiled. Kevin was stunned. If we don't short it, how do we make it fall? What I want you to do is not short selling, I said, word by word. It's market manipulation. Kevin's eyes widened suddenly, filled with disbelief. Market manipulation. With 10 million, Miss Jenny, are you joking? Market manipulation is about driving up the stock price, but you want it to fall. Exactly. I looked at him with a determined gaze. Using 10 million in capital, through high-frequency trading and coordinated account transactions, will create the illusion of massive trading volume. We'll drive its stock price from $12 to $50 within half a month, and then, Kevin's voice sounded a bit strained, then, a cold smile curled at the corner of my lips, I will release a report exposing JS Mining's financial fraud, just when all the retail investors and institutions you've attracted are lost in the dream of soaring stock prices. I will personally burst this bubble. When the avalanche comes, not a single snowflake is innocent. I will make the Powell family pay the first price for their arrogance. Kevin stared at me in a daze, his lips trembling, but not a single word came out. This plan is insane, using 10 million in capital to leverage a market value of several billion. This isn't investment, it's war, a meticulously planned financial war targeted at the Powell family. After a long while, he finally found his voice again. Why should I believe you? How can you guarantee that short report is effective? Because 3 days ago, I was the one who made $10 million on Nolan Communications. I took out my phone, opened the overseas brokerage account, and showed him the completed transaction record. Kevin's breathing instantly stopped. That mysterious account, Z, the trader who shocked the entire LC financial circle, was actually this girl right in front of him. He looked at me, his gaze shifting from doubt to shock, and finally, turning into a flicker of fervent flame. It was the flame of a gambler who had encountered the ultimate game. Need help, he said hoarsely. I need the most precise data models and the most untraceable trading programs. I understand. I put away my phone and sent 2 more emails, one to Linda, after being blacklisted by the industry. Do you want to fade into obscurity, or use your actuarial models to personally bury those who betrayed you? Tomorrow at 3 p.m., North City Library, 3rd floor, Section C, I'll be waiting. Another one. To Ghost, John, your code shouldn't just be used to attack the Pentagon's firewall. How about building a financial empire that even the world can't trace? If you can see this email, it means you're already intrigued. The address is Entropy Capital. I looked up and turned to Kevin. Your helpers will all be here tomorrow. I shoved the bank card back into his hand. Now, tell me your answer. Will you keep being a stray dog that everyone wants to chase away? Or will you join me in flipping this table? Kevin looked down at the bank card in his hand, then raised his head to look at me. The exhaustion and desolation in his eyes vanished, replaced by the ferocity and determination of a wolf. He grinned. Boss, he said, the next day, at the North City Library. This is an old Soviet-style building, with sunlight streaming through the tall windows, casting long beams of light through the dust in the air. I was sitting in a corner on the 3rd floor. In Section C, with a copy of Theory of Stochastic Processes in front of me, at 2:50 in the afternoon, a woman in a professional suit and black-rimmed glasses appeared in my line of sight. She walked quickly, her back straight as a ramrod, like a sharp sword ready to be drawn at any moment. She was Linda. 2 years ago, she was still the most proud genius actuary at AXA Insurance. Because she refused to go along with the crowd, she was completely abandoned by the entire industry. She walked straight to my desk, pulled out the chair, and sat down. Are you Jenny? Her voice was cold and scrutinizing. That's me. I closed the book. Bury them. Linda adjusted her glasses, her gaze sharp as a knife behind the lenses. That's quite the claim. Do you know who my opponents are? It's AS Insurance and the entire interest group behind it. What do you have to bury them with? With mathematics, I replied calmly. I turned my laptop toward her, revealing a complex financial model on the screen. These are the financial reports of JS Mining from the past 3 years. I said, I need you, with your expertise, to find evidence of their financial fraud from this publicly available data. Linda's gaze fell on the screen and was instantly captivated. She adjusted her glasses and leaned forward unconsciously. Accounts receivable turnover is abnormal, deviating from the industry average by more than 3 standard deviations. Inventory does not match revenue growth, construction in progress is inflated, related party transactions are not fair, she murmured to herself, her fingers unconsciously tracing patterns in the air, as if constructing an invisible model. In just 5 minutes, she had pointed out 7 suspicious points in the financial report, faster than I imagined. These are just suspicions. Linda looked up and turned her gaze back to me. Without the internal ledgers, we can't deliver a fatal blow. The Powell family has a top-tier legal and accounting team that can easily explain all of this as reasonable business operations. I don't need a fatal blow. I shook my head. I just need a sufficiently detailed, professional, and credible questioning report that can create panic in the market. The rest can be left to the panic itself. You're planning to short it. Linda immediately caught on. No, I looked into her eyes. I want to first lift it to the altar. Then personally push it down. I briefly explained Kevin's market manipulation plan to her. After listening, Linda fell silent. She looked at me, and for the first time, shock appeared in her eyes. Crazy, she spat out 2 words. Maybe. I shrugged indifferently, but only a madman can defeat another madman. Linda, you've been blacklisted by them for 2 years. Are you really content to stay in a small accounting firm, checking those boring receipts every day, wasting your talent? Your model should be used to deconstruct the stars and the sea, not rot in the mud. This sentence seemed to strike the deepest pain in her heart. Her body trembled slightly, and the knuckles of her hand resting on the table turned white from the force. What's in it for me if I join? She asked, her voice somewhat dry. Entropy Capital, 20% equity stake. I offered. Linda's pupils suddenly contracted. 20% equity stake, for a startup, is almost like partner-level treatment. Why do you trust me so much? We only met for the first time today, because the Information Entropy Observer tells me that your value goes far beyond this. I silently thought to myself, of course, I couldn't say that, because of your resume, and your performance in the last 5 minutes. I pointed to the computer. I need your brain. As for trust, it's built through one victory after another, not by talking about it. Linda and I stared at each other for a long time. The sunlight from the library shone on her, casting a golden glow over her rigid professional attire. Finally, she nodded. Good, I'll have the report for you within 3 days, but I need an absolutely secure network environment and an untraceable database. I don't want to be sued again for leaking trade secrets. No problem, I closed my laptop. Your third colleague will take care of that. I stood up, ready to leave. Welcome to Entropy Capital. Wait, Linda called out to me. I'm curious. Who is your third colleague? Which programmer can guarantee absolute security? I smiled and mentioned the code name that was only circulated within the circle. Ghost. Linda's expression completely changed. The first office of Entropy Capital was located on the top floor of an office building in LC City that was about to be demolished. The rent is cheap, and it's discreet enough. When I brought Kevin and Linda into this empty, unfinished apartment, their expressions were hard to describe. Boss, are we really going to work here? Kevin looked around at the peeling walls and the thick layer of dust on the windows. Is there a problem? I asked. No, not at all. Kevin immediately shook his head. It just feels a bit retro. Linda remained silent, only adjusting her glasses as her gaze searched for something. Where's the network cable? She asked, coming right up. As I was speaking, the office door was pushed open. A tall, thin young man walked in. He was wearing a t-shirt printed with "Hello World," carrying a large backpack, wearing headphones, and his eyes were darting around, as if he didn't dare to make eye contact with anyone. He walked to the center of the room, put down his backpack, and pulled out a strangely shaped server and a bunch of equipment I couldn't understand. Then, without saying a word, he began assembling and connecting the wires. Kevin and Linda both looked at him curiously. Who is this? Kevin whispered to me. John, I said. Kevin and Linda exchanged a glance, both seeing the shock in each other's eyes. Ghost, John, the legendary social anxiety genius. He actually came. 10 minutes later, John finished all the settings. He walked up to me, still keeping his head down, took a small USB drive out of his pocket, and handed it to me. A dedicated encrypted network is set up, physically isolated, data flows one way, no one can trace it. His voice was soft, halting, but every word was crystal clear. This is the first time I've spoken with him in person since I received his email reply yesterday. I took the USB drive. Thanks for your hard work. As if he had completed his task, he immediately retreated to the corner. Sat down with his knees hugged to his chest, put his headphones back on, and opened his laptop, completely withdrawing into his own world, as if nothing in the outside world had anything to do with him. Kevin and Linda looked at each other, bewildered by the scene. Has he always been like this? Linda asked. Yes, I nodded. He lives in the code, but give him a keyboard, and he's a god. I connected the UPAN to Kevin's and Linda's computers, respectively. From now on, all data interactions for Entropy Capital will be conducted through this internal network. Linda, you can complete your models and reports on it. Absolutely secure. Kevin, all your trading orders will be sent through the Ghost router, written by John. It will break down your IP address into thousands of data packets, hopping between hundreds of nodes worldwide. No one can trace the source. After hearing my words, both Kevin and Linda showed expressions of fervor on their faces. A top-tier trader, a genius actuary, and a ghost-like programmer, plus me, a commander who can see entropy. This alliance of the useless has already begun to take shape. All right, everyone, I clapped my hands, drawing everyone's attention. The Hunt.js plan officially begins now. Kevin, starting from tomorrow's market opening, begin accumulating shares. Remember, do it quietly, using hundreds of different sub-accounts, seeping in like drops of water without alerting anyone. Linda, I need to see the first draft of your short-selling report. I want data, logic, and a flawless deduction that no professional can refute. John, I looked at the figure in the corner. Monitor all public data streams of JS Mining and Powell Holdings. Report any abnormal fluctuations to me immediately. John didn't look up, just nodded slightly. Boss. Kevin looked at me, his eyes gleaming with excitement. What should we call this plan? I thought for a moment. And the image of Simon Powell's condescending face at the birthday party flashed through my mind. Just call it the bell ringer operation. I will personally ring the death knell for the Powell family's downfall. The next 2 weeks were calm and uneventful. In the office of Entropy Capital, only the sound of keyboard clicks and occasional low discussions could be heard. Like a patient hunter, Kevin split $10 million into countless small amounts every day, quietly buying shares of JS Mining through the complex account network built by John. His trading techniques were extremely sophisticated, sometimes placing large buy orders, other times executing small sell orders, perfectly concealing himself among countless retail investors. On the candlestick chart, JS Mining's stock price continued to fluctuate narrowly around $12. With no abnormalities in trading volume, no one knew that a massive net was slowly spreading beneath the surface. As for Linda, she immersed herself in the world of data. She worked tirelessly, combing through every financial report, announcement, and even industry news from JS Mining's past 5 years. With the data support provided by John, she constructed a vast and intricate correlation model. 3 days later, a 50-page draft report was placed on my desk. I quickly flipped through it. The report starts with the abnormal gross profit margin of JS Mining, then progresses step by step through comparisons with industry data and cross-verification of suppliers and customers. It directly points to its core issue, fabricating at least $3 billion in rare earth mineral reserves by falsifying exploration reports and asset evaluations. This phantom asset was injected into the listed company, thereby defrauding bank loans and stock market financing. The logic is clear, and the chain of evidence is complete, although there is no direct evidence like internal account books. This report is enough to make any rational investor harbor fatal doubts about the value of JS Mining. Very well, I closed the report. Now, all that's left is to wait for the right moment. Boss, we've already acquired over 8% of the outstanding shares. Kevin walked over to me, pointing at the data on the screen. If we continue buying, we might alert the Powell family. Enough, I nodded. Starting tomorrow, we move to the second phase. Pump it up. Kevin's eyes lit up. Yes. Violently drive up the price. I looked at John. Can you simulate the trading behavior of at least 10,000 retail investors? John looked up, glanced at me, then lowered his head and typed a few words on the keyboard. A window popped up on the screen. Can simulate millions. Behavior patterns are customizable. Excellent. I smiled. Starting tomorrow, use these virtual accounts to conduct high-frequency matched trades with our real accounts. I want to amplify JS Mining's trading volume tenfold in a single day. This, Kevin gasped sharply, this will draw everyone's attention. I want them to look. I walked to the window, gazing at the ceaseless flow of the city below. The bait has been cast. Now, it's time to let the fish smell the blood. The next day, the A-share market opened at exactly 9:30. A buy order for 5,000 lots suddenly appeared in the JS Mining order book. The stock price instantly jumped from $12.1 to $12.3. Immediately after, 10,000 lots, 20,000 lots, massive buy orders seemed to appear out of thin air, frantically driving the stock price higher. In the trading hall, countless eyes were drawn to this soaring bullish candlestick. What's going on? Did JS Mining release some positive news? I don't know. I haven't heard any news. Who cares? Let's jump in and grab a quick profit. Countless retail investors were drawn in by this sudden surge and followed suit. In front of the screen, Kevin's fingers moved so fast on the keyboard that they almost left after images. He manipulated hundreds of accounts, seamlessly coordinating with John's virtual program. Buying, selling, and buying again. The stock price was rising, and trading volume was soaring. But in reality, the number of chips we held hadn't increased much. We were merely using 10 million in capital as a catalyst to ignite the entire market's frenzy. On the first day, JS Mining hit the daily limit up, with its stock price at $13.31 and trading volume 15 times that of the previous day. On the second day, it opened with a limit up gap at $14.64. On the third day, it continued to hit the daily limit up, reaching $16.10. Major financial forums and stock communities in LC City were completely abuzz. JS Mining. The next meme stock, inside scoop, the Powell family is planning a big move, target price set at 50, all in, let's go. I stared coldly at the fanatical comments on the screen. Greed is the best fuel. At that very moment, my phone rang. It's an unfamiliar number. I answered the phone. Jenny, said the voice on the other end. Simon Powell's, tinged with suppressed anger and confusion. Was it you who did this to JS Mining? I was a bit surprised that he had suspected me so quickly, Mr. Powell. You're still concerned about who is worthy of you, while I only care whether the K-line chart will hit the limit up tomorrow, I retorted with his own words. The gap between us isn't wealth, it's perception. What exactly are you trying to do? His voice carried a hint of impatience. Me? I chuckled lightly. I'm just an ordinary investor who spotted a stock with potential. Jenny, I'm warning you, don't play with fire. JS Mining isn't something you should mess with, is that so? I walked to the window, looking in the direction of the Powell Group headquarters building, and said calmly, the fire has been lit, Mr. Powell, enjoy the fireworks. After saying that, I hung up the phone. The game has only just begun. Over the next week, JS Mining's stock price surged like a runaway horse. With Kevin and John's perfect coordination, it hit 7 consecutive limit up days. The stock price soared from $12 all the way to $25. The entire stock market in LC City went crazy. Countless funds poured into this stock, with everyone wanting to get a piece of the capital feast. Powell Holdings headquarters, the atmosphere in the top floor conference room was tense. Simon Powell stared at the glaring red candlestick on the screen, his face ashen. Have you found out who is behind this manipulation? He demanded sharply. A department manager, trembling with fear, replied, Mr. Powell, we've investigated. All the buy orders came from thousands of different individual accounts, extremely scattered. We can't trace the source. It doesn't seem like the work of an institution, not an institution. Simon Powell's frown deepened. He thought of Jenny, but how could she alone have such immense power to move a multi-billion-dollar market? Mr. Powell, the market sentiment is extremely high right now. Many institutions are also starting to follow the trend and buy in. Should we issue a clarification announcement to highlight the risks? Another executive suggested. Highlight the risks. Simon Powell sneered. Why should we highlight the risks? A rising stock price is good for us. It shows the market is optimistic about our assets. He is inherently filled with the arrogance of the elite. He doesn't believe that anyone could stir up any trouble right under his nose. Not only are we not warning about the risks, but we're also adding fuel to the fire. A glint of shrewdness flashed in Simon Powell's eyes. Contact the financial media immediately and tell them that the Powell family will inject a new round of assets into JS Mining, which is favorable for the new energy sector. I want the stock price to soar even higher. He wanted to use this tailwind to push JS Mining's market value to new heights. Little did he know that this wind had been prepared for him from the very beginning, in the office of Entropy Capital. John projected the just intercepted intelligence onto the screen. The Powell family is about to release positive news. Both Kevin and Linda looked at me. Boss, they've taken the bait. Kevin's tone was barely able to conceal his excitement. The time has come. I nodded and looked at Linda. The report can be released now. A glint flashed in Linda's eyes. She walked over to her computer and gently tapped a key on the keyboard. Enter. The next second, the 50-page short-selling report, complete with detailed data models and logical deductions, was sent simultaneously as an anonymous email to hundreds of mainstream financial media outlets, securities research institutes, and well-known financial influencers across the country. The subject line of the email was shocking: JS Mining, a $3 billion scam. After completing all of this, the office fell into silence. Everyone was waiting for the market's first echo. Half an hour later, the first trigger point has emerged. One of China's most well-known financial bloggers, Stock Market Detective, reposted this report on his Weibo account, which has 5 million followers. Bombshell received an anonymous short report on JS Mining, with extremely detailed content and terrifyingly rigorous logic. If the report is true, this will be the biggest scandal in the A-share market this year. Attached is the full report for everyone to judge for themselves. At JS Mining at Powell Holdings, this Weibo post, like a depth charge, instantly exploded on the calm lake surface. Repost, comment, like, the numbers are growing exponentially. Holy shit, is this for real? 3 billion in financial fraud. I've read the report. It's written so professionally. It doesn't seem made up. Is the Powell family in trouble? Panic began to spread like a plague. Shortly after, major financial media and websites started reporting on the matter, though their wording was cautious. They all pointed the report's accusations directly at JS Mining and the Powell family behind it. At 1:00 p.m., the A-share market opened for the afternoon session. On the trading board of JS Mining, there was not a single buy order. Instead, there was an overwhelming flood of sell orders. Tens of thousands, even millions of sell orders are tightly locked at the limit down price. The stock price plummeted from $25.8 to $23.22 in an instant. Limit down. Those investors who were celebrating this morning are now all dumbfounded. What's going on? Why did it hit the limit down? Quick, look at the news. JS Mining is being shorted. Damn it. I just went all in this morning. The land is filled with mourning, and this is only the beginning. I stared at the frozen limit down board on the screen, my eyes showing no trace of emotion. Kevin, I issued a new directive. Let's list our chips in batches. Boss, even if we set a limit down order now, we can't sell it. Kevin was puzzled. Who said anything about selling? I smiled faintly. Place our sell orders 1 cent above the lower limit. Kevin was taken aback for a moment, then suddenly understood. A look of admiration spreading across his face. This move is too ruthless. Countless people want to flee at the limit down, but our sell orders are always 1 cent higher than theirs. This means that as long as the limit down remains unbroken, our chips will always be ahead of theirs, giving them a sense of despair that there are still people above pressing down, making it impossible to sell. This will further exacerbate market panic. John, increase the sell orders in the virtual accounts, and push the order book to over 5 million lots. Linda, prepare the second report. Focus on Powell Holdings' use of JS Mining for illegal guarantees and improper transfer of benefits. My voice was not loud, but in the empty office, it carried an undeniable force. What's there to panic about? I looked at the nervous team members. We're not gambling. We just saw the correct answer ahead of time. Now, go get the money that belongs to us. The avalanche of JS Mining was more violent than anyone had imagined. After the first limit down came the second, the third. Powell Holdings urgently issued a clarification statement, vehemently refuting the short-selling report as malicious slander and announcing that they would pursue legal action, but the market no longer believed them. Linda's report was written too perfectly. Every piece of data, every inference, was like a scalpel, precisely striking at the core of JS Mining. More importantly, it triggered a crisis of confidence in the market. Once trust collapses, no amount of statements can help. The most fatal blow came from the regulatory authorities. On the third day after the short report was released, the China Securities Regulatory Commission announced that, due to receiving numerous complaints, it would formally launch an investigation into JS Mining for suspected financial fraud and violations of information disclosure regulations. Once the news broke, JS Mining's stock price completely lost its support. It experienced 7 consecutive limit down trading sessions. The stock price plummeted from its peak of $25.8 $8 all the way down to around $10. Countless retail investors and institutions who bought in at high levels were trapped at the peak, losing everything. As for us, we took advantage of Kevin's masterful trading skills to quietly and completely offload our holdings the moment the first limit down was lifted. The initial capital of 10 million tripled during the process of pumping and dumping, 30 million, a perfect hunt in the office of entropy capital. However, the atmosphere was not that of a victory. Kevin stared at the 30 million in the account, his brow furrowed. Boss, the profit we made, isn't it a bit too little? He felt somewhat dissatisfied. After orchestrating such a massive storm, the final profit was actually less than what he had made from Nolan Communications. Who said we made money? I shook my head. Both Kevin and Linda were stunned. I opened my computer and pulled up another interface. It was an overseas futures account. On the account, a massive short position was clearly listed. Short target, Singapore Iron Ore Index Futures. JS Mining's largest downstream client is LC Steel Group, and LC Steel Group is the core business of James' family. I pointed at the data stream on the screen and said slowly, the collapse of JS Mining will lead to a disruption in the supply of rare earth raw materials. To maintain production, LC Steel will have no choice but to import at high prices from overseas. This will directly drive up the international price of iron ore. But, I changed my tone, the financial fraud scandal at JS Mining will trigger a trust crisis across the entire industry chain. Regulatory agencies will strictly investigate the financial conditions of all mining companies. And banks will tighten loans to this industry. In a chain reaction, iron ore futures, as a barometer for commodities, are bound to plummet in the short term due to risk aversion. So, the moment the short report was released, I used all the funds in our account to add 20 times leverage overseas and shorted the iron ore index. My words left both Kevin and Linda stunned. They had planned for so long, thinking the target was only JS Mining, only the Powell family. I never expected that my true target, from the very beginning, included the James family. This is a chain of schemes. Shorting JS Mining was the first link. It was a catalyst, a lever. The real killing blow is right here. As I was speaking, the price of iron ore futures on the international market began to plummet. Panic spread from the A-share market to the global commodity markets. On the screen, the profit numbers in our account were wildly fluctuating. 5 million, 10 million, 30 million. Finally, when the price stabilized, the number settled at 50 million. It was in dollars. Kevin looked at that number, his hands trembling. Boss, we made $50 million with $30 million. To be precise, I closed the interface. With a startup capital of 10 million, I turned it into $50 million within a month, converted to RMB. That's over 300 million. In the office, there was a deathly silence. Kevin and Linda looked at me, their eyes as if gazing upon a deity. Now, I stood up, scanning my team. Do you still think we're earning too little? Kevin shook his head vigorously, his face unable to contain his ecstasy. Not at all, not even a little. Linda also adjusted her glasses, and for the first time, a fervent look appeared in her eyes beneath the lenses. She finally understood that the phrase, bury them, in my email was not an empty threat. This young girl truly has the capability to do it. As for me, I simply walked calmly to the window and gazed into the distance of the city. The James family, the Powell family, this is just the appetizer for you. The real storm is yet to come. TX Energy has gone public. This new energy project, jointly created by the James and Powell families, was born with a silver spoon in its mouth. Media coverage was overwhelming, calling it the future star leading the fourth industrial revolution and the next trillion-dollar market value myth. On the day of its listing, the stock price surged by 300%, making it the center of attention. The true heiress, Fiona James, as the brand ambassador of Skyline Energy, stood under the spotlight in a white gown, her smile sweet and innocent. Beside her was the confident and spirited Simon Powell. During an interview, they were inevitably asked about the recent JS Mining incident. Simon Powell's expression remained unchanged. He faced the camera and smiled faintly. The market always fluctuates. The minor antics of some speculators are of little consequence. True value, like that of TX Energy, will withstand the test of time and ultimately shine brightly. His gaze seemed to pierce through the screen, carrying a hint of disdain and warning. As for that so-called entropy capital, if they dare to oppose a giant like TX Energy, It would be nothing short of a mantis trying to stop a chariot. In the office of Entropy Capital, Kevin angrily slammed his fist on the table. How arrogant, boss. He's openly declaring war on us. Linda also frowned and said, TX Energy's background is too strong. It has the backing of James Powell and government support. Its fundamentals seem flawless. I didn't say a word, just quietly watched the radiant man on the screen, on my retina. The Information Entropy Observer has already provided the answer, astral energy, information entropy, 92, for extremely chaotic, extremely unstable, even higher than the entropy value of Nolan Communications when it was on the verge of bankruptcy. This is not normal. A star project so highly regarded by the market shouldn't have such a high entropy value, unless there is a massive lie hidden within it, one that is enough to overturn everything. John, I said. I need all the technical patent documents of TX Energy, the resumes of the core team, and all their collaboration records with Blue Light Laboratory from the past year. Blue Light Laboratory is claimed to be the source of TX Energy's technology. John nodded, his fingers flying across the keyboard. An hour later, the encrypted data was transmitted to my computer. I flipped through the pages one by one, and Linda leaned in to take a look as well. That's strange. Linda pointed at a technical white paper. Their core technology, the breakthrough in energy density of solid-state lithium batteries. The reasoning behind the key parameters is very vague. Many parts are just glossed over with theoretically feasible. Look at this. I opened the resumes of the core technical team. Chief Scientist, Adam Smith. His resume states that he holds a PhD from MIT and previously worked as a senior researcher at Tesla. John, look into this Adam Smith. 5 minutes later, John sent a link. That is a personal profile on a foreign social media platform, and the owner of the profile is also named Adam Smith. The photo shows a white, overweight man vacationing in Hawaii. His bio reads, former Tesla employee, now retired, enjoying the sun and the beach, and his alma mater is a community college. Both Kevin and Linda were dumbfounded. Is this a scammer? Kevin stammered, no, she's an actress, I said coldly. The James and Powell families found an actress with the same name and fabricated an impressive resume to endorse their project. What about the technology? Is that fake too? Linda pressed. Not entirely. I shook my head and opened the Blue Light Lab's documents. The Blue Light Lab does have this technology, but it's still in the theoretical stage. It's at least 5 years away from commercialization. The James and Powell families couldn't wait any longer. They used an exorbitant contract to buy out the future results of the Blue Light Laboratory, then packaged it as an already successful project with polished PowerPoint presentations and fabricated resumes, and launched it into the capital market. This is a complete Ponzi scheme, Linda gasped sharply. She finally understood what that staggering entropy value of 92 for represented. It represented a massive bubble, ready to burst at the slightest touch. Boss, Kevin's voice trembled. Not from fear but from extreme excitement. Are we going to short it? Of course. I watched the still rising stock price of TX Energy on the screen, a cruel smile curling at the corner of my lips. The higher they push it up, the harder I'll make it fall. Linda, your previous report can now be put to use. I want something more shocking. A short report powerful enough to nail TX Energy to the pillar of shame. Kevin, contact the most greedy hedge funds on Wall Street. Tell them I've discovered a once-in-a-lifetime shorting opportunity. Entropy Capital is willing to share this feast with them. John, keep a close watch on the real person in charge of Blue Light Lab. I want to know his every move. Orders were issued one after another. My team, like a precise war machine, started operating at high speed again. Simon Powell said I don't dare to oppose astral energy. He was wrong. I'm not here to oppose it. I'm here to personally send it, along with the entire James and Powell families behind it, straight to hell. Shorting astral energy is a real war. Its scale is too large, with a market value exceeding 200 billion. No single institution can possibly shake it. So I found allies, the vultures of Wall Street. I anonymously contacted 3 hedge funds known for short selling, Phantom Capital, Mueller Capital, and Megalodon Capital. That's right. It's the Megalodon Capital that forced Kevin into a margin call 3 years ago. When I sent them the initial draft of the 100-page short-selling report completed by Linda, I could imagine the expressions on the fund managers' faces on the other end of the line: shock, suspicion, and then greed. Who are you? The heads of all 3 funds asked the same question. I am the one who can make you earn over $1 billion on astral energy. That was the only sentence I answered. 3 days later, I held a video conference with them at a private bank in Switzerland. I did not show my face and used a voice changer developed by John. During the meeting, I presented them with evidence regarding the actor, scientists, and the true progress of Blue Light Labs technology. These ironclad facts completely dispelled their doubts. We need to act in unison, said the man in charge of Megalodon Capital, a man named Charles, his voice hoarse, when the report is released. There must be sufficient capital to launch an attack simultaneously in both the secondary market and the derivatives market. I need $3 billion, I stated my terms, provided by the three of you. Entropy Capital will invest all of our own funds and take the lead in this short-selling operation. $3 billion, on what basis? Questioned the person in charge of Thor's hammer. Just because this report was given by me. Without me, you wouldn't even find the door. My voice was cold and left no room for doubt. And the profits will be split equally among the four of us. Silence. I knew they were weighing their options. In the end, greed triumphed over caution. Fine. Charles was the first to speak up. I agree. But if you dare to mess with us, Megalodon Capital will make you know what it means to vanish from the face of the earth. Don't worry. I smiled. I want to see TX Energy fall more than any of you. The agreement was reached, a total of $3 billion US, plus our own 50 million, amounting to over 20 billion RMB in massive funds. Like a giant beast lurking in the deep sea, quietly completed their positions through tens of thousands of accounts. A large number of short orders were placed in the futures and options markets. Everything is just waiting for a signal, and the stock price of TX Energy continues to rise steadily, driven deliberately by the James and Powell families. Its market value has already surpassed the 300 billion mark. Investors across the entire market are going wild. As if missing out on TX Energy means missing out on the entire era, Fiona James's commercial value has also surged, making her the darling of major fashion magazines and high-end banquets. She even naively said in an interview, "I'm very grateful to my brother, Simon Powell, and my dad for creating such a great company. It will change the world." I watched this video in my office, expressionless. Change the world? No, it will only destroy your world. The timing arrived on the day TX Energy released its first quarter financial report. The financial report was exceptionally strong, with both revenue and profit far exceeding expectations. The stock price surged in response, hitting an all-time high. The market was filled with jubilation. It was on this day that I pressed the launch button. Linda, release the report. Kevin, notify Wall Street to start the sell-off. John, anonymously send all the evidence we've prepared to major financial regulatory agencies and media outlets worldwide. The command was issued. The 100-page short report, titled The Fall of TX, a meticulously engineered technology scam, by Linda, was like a nuclear bomb dropped on the unprepared capital market. At the same time, an avalanche of sell orders descended upon the secondary market. TX Energy's stock price, after reaching its peak, remained there for only 3 minutes. Then, it plummeted straight down. From hitting the upper limit to turning red, it took less than 10 minutes. Countless people were caught off guard, stunned by the sudden crash. What's going on? What happened? Short report. Go check the news. TX Energy has been accused of technological fraud. Impossible. This must be a rumor. But when they saw that report, when they saw the chief scientist, who graduated from a community college, their faith began to waver. Panic, like a breached flood, became uncontrollable. The stock price plummeted. Powell Group headquarters. Simon Powell stared at the sharply declining K line on the screen, his entire body frozen. He picked up the phone, his voice trembling with anger. Support the stock, at all costs. Support the stock. Pull the price back up. Billions in support funds were thrown into the market like stones into the sea, barely making a splash before being swallowed by the overwhelming selling pressure. This was no longer just market behavior. This was war, a long-planned financial takedown, jointly launched by me and the vultures of Wall Street, targeting the James Powell Alliance. Mr. Powell, we can't hold on, our funds are almost depleted. The desperate cry of the trading director came through the phone. We can't hold the line. There are sell orders everywhere, and there's no end in sight. Simon Powell put down the phone dejectedly, his face ashen. He stared at the short-selling report being frantically shared on his computer screen. Every word felt like a slap, striking him hard across the face. He finally understood that he had been wrong from the very beginning. He had underestimated Jenny and underestimated that little-known entropy capital. He thought it was just small-time trouble. He never expected that the other party could actually leverage Wall Street capital to launch such a fatal blow. At that moment, his phone rang. It was Bob James calling. "Simon, what on earth is going on? Why has TX's stock price collapsed?" The old man's voice was filled with panic. "Dad, we've been shorted," Simon Powell said with difficulty. "Sold short? Who did it?" "It's Jenny." Simon Powell's voice was filled with bitterness and regret. On the other end of the phone, there was a long silence. Bob James probably also remembered the girl who calmly took out $30 million at the birthday banquet and then left without looking back. The fake heiress they had driven out of the family. In just a few months, she had launched such a fierce retaliation in a way they couldn't even comprehend. "Hold on," Bob James's voice rang out again, with a hint of bluster. "TX cannot fall. If it collapses, both our families are finished. I'll go to the banks immediately, use my connections, and no matter what, we must pull the stock price back up." However, they no longer had a chance. The next day, the world's largest news agencies simultaneously exposed the scandal of TX Energy's technological fraud. The chief scientist was an actor, and the core technology was still in the laboratory. The evidence was undeniable. Investigation letters from regulatory agencies poured into the James and Powell groups like snowflakes. Banks tightened all their loans to them. Partners who once surrounded them are now avoiding them at all costs. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. TX Energy's stock price has hit the limit down for consecutive days. It has plummeted from its peak market value of $300 billion into an abyss. A week later, the company announced a trading halt and is under investigation. The James and Powell families suffered losses exceeding $100 billion in this disaster, severely crippling them and pushing them to the brink of bankruptcy. Meanwhile, the numbers in Entropy Capital's account were refreshed once again. The $50 million we invested in this short-selling campaign multiplied tenfold, $500 million, including the profits shared with our Wall Street allies. We collectively created a massive profit exceeding $2 billion. I became a legend in one fell swoop. Stormmaker, this is the new nickname Wall Street gave me. In the office, Kevin, Linda, and John stared at the numbers in the account, too excited to speak. They had done it. These losers, who had been abandoned by the world, following me, had personally created a financial storm that shocked the globe. "Boss," Kevin's voice trembled, "we succeeded." "No." I shook my head and walked to the window, gazing at the city's night view. "This is only the beginning of the fourth act." My gaze turned toward the direction of the James family's old mansion. That estate, once a symbol of power and wealth, now seemed to me as if it were on the verge of collapse. The real reckoning hasn't arrived yet. The James family is in chaos. The collapse of TX Energy was like pushing over the first domino. The stock price of the James Group plummeted, banks demanded debt repayment, partners terminated contracts, and subsidiaries faced a series of liquidity crises. This once influential and powerful family in LC City found itself in a precarious situation overnight. The patriarch of the James family, Bob James, was overwhelmed with anxiety. In an effort to reverse the family's decline, he began leveraging the connections he had built over decades, seeking help from all directions. He even joined forces with several long-established financial groups that had close ties to the James family, attempting to corner Entropy Capital. They froze all of our domestic accounts that could be traced and began tarnishing my reputation in the media, labeling me as a traitor who stole business secrets and maliciously shorted domestic enterprises. However, these little tricks were already within my expectations. Our core funds are all overseas. That afternoon, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Fiona James. "Jenny, can we meet?" Her voice was choked with tears, devoid of its usual innocence and sweetness, leaving only exhaustion and pleading. I remained silent for a moment before agreeing. We met at a cafe. She looked much more haggard, with heavy dark circles under her eyes. Even her expensive clothes couldn't conceal her disheveled state. "Jenny," she began eagerly as soon as she sat down, "I beg you, please be merciful and let the James family go." "Dad, he already knows he was wrong." I picked up my coffee, took a small sip, and remained silent. "I know we've wronged you." Fiona James's tears began to fall. But the James family raised you for 18 years. Even if there's no familial bond, there should still be some affection, right? How can you be so ruthless as to drive us to ruin?" I set down my coffee cup and looked at her. Fiona James, you're begging me to spare the James family, just like a stock investor pleading for the stock market not to crash. It's laughable. My voice was very calm. The market doesn't believe in tears, and neither do I. 18 years of upbringing. I've already repaid it with 30 million. From the moment I walked out of the James family's door, we were even. As for being heartless, I smiled. When you drove me out of the house and made me the laughingstock of the entire city, did you ever stop to consider whether your actions were heartless? Fiona James was left speechless by my question. This isn't just my opinion, it's Grandpa, it's Mom and Dad. She tried to defend herself. So, are you here to plead for them now? I interrupted her. Then you should tell them that business is like a battlefield. If you lose, you have to accept it, Jenny. She stood up agitatedly. What will it take for you to stop? As long as you're willing to spare the James family, I'll do anything. I can leave Simon Powell. I can give you back your rightful place as the true heiress. I look at her as if watching a naive child. Your position? I shake my head. Fiona James, you still don't understand. What I've always wanted was never the position of the James family's heiress. What I want is to build my own, unrivaled financial empire. And the James family, the Powell family, they are merely insignificant stepping stones on my path to success. With that, I stood up and prepared to leave. Oh, right, I said, as if suddenly remembering something, and glanced back at her. Go back and tell your grandfather. He should put away all those little tricks of his. Otherwise, next time, it won't just be a loss of 100 billion. Walking out of the cafe, the sunlight was a bit glaring. My phone rang. It's John, boss. The fish has taken the bait. The corners of my mouth lifted slightly. Just now, the consortiums allied with the James family used illegal means to attempt an attack on Entropy Capital's internal network, trying to steal our investment models. They had no idea that John had already set up an inescapable trap. The hackers they sent not only failed but were also counter-tracked by John, who locked onto their IP addresses. More importantly, John intentionally left a backdoor in the firewall, leaking a fake investment portfolio, a piece of false intelligence suggesting we were about to heavily go long on certain stocks. Notify Kevin, I said into the phone. It's time to close the net. A hunt targeting the anti-hunters was about to begin. In the study of the James family patriarch, the atmosphere was oppressive. Several old friends, all prominent leaders of financial groups in LC City, now wore grave expressions. James, is the information reliable? One of the Leo executives asked. Is that Jenny really going to heavily invest in these stocks? Absolutely true. Bob James slammed a document on the table. This is top secret intelligence our insider obtained from her company. She made billions shorting Skystar Energy and is now preparing to make a major move into the A-share market. Her investment model is almost foolproof. As long as we follow her lead, not only can we recover our previous losses, but we can also make a huge profit. In Bob James' eyes, the flames of greed and revenge flickered intensely. He thought he had obtained the script to turn defeat into victory. The others exchanged glances and were also tempted. All right, let's do it, Mr. Leo slapped his thigh. Let's join forces, pool 10 billion in funds, and follow her in buying. This time, we must make that little brat lose everything. They had no idea that this top secret intelligence was something I had personally prepared for them. The next day, the A-share market opened. A massive $10 billion in funds poured frantically into the stocks listed in the intelligence. The stock prices immediately hit the daily limit. Bob James and the others looked at the red line on the screen and finally showed a long-lost smile. Ha ha ha, that little bitch is still too young after all. Who does she think she is, trying to fight us? They were immersed in the joy of victory, completely unaware that a larger net was quietly closing in. Entropy Capital office, John's voice rang out. Boss. They have gone all in. Good. I nodded and looked at Kevin. Proceed. Kevin took a deep breath and typed the command on the keyboard. Our prearranged massive short positions were instantly activated, but the target was not those few stocks that had been pulled to the limit up, but the other industries under the James Family Alliance that have no connection to these stocks: real estate, pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, besieged the enemy to annihilate their reinforcements. Linda instantly understood my intention. Exactly. I looked at the falling K-line charts on the screen. Their main funds are tightly trapped in those stocks because of my false information. Now, their backyard is on fire, and they have no strength left to rescue it. The news quickly reached Bob James. What? Our real estate stocks are being shorted. Mr. Leo's company has also been attacked. Oh no, this is a trap. We've been set up. In the study, chaos reigned. Bob James's face turned deathly pale. He wanted to withdraw his funds to save his own business, but that 10 billion was firmly locked in at the daily limit up. He couldn't even sell if he wanted to. Panic spread within the alliance. James, didn't you say the intel was real? What do we do now? My company can't hold on much longer. I'm pulling out my investment. The alliance instantly descended into internal strife. Just as they were in disarray, I threw in the final straw. I had John anonymously submit the evidence he had intercepted, proof of the James family alliance kidnapping hackers for commercial crimes, to the police. The police arrived quickly. When Mr. Leo was taken away on suspicion of commercial espionage and illegal intrusion into computer systems. This fragile alliance completely collapsed. The remaining consortiums, in order to protect themselves, frantically sold off James Group's stocks to distance themselves. James Group's stock price plummeted once again. This time, no one could save it anymore. 3 days later, the news came that at the board meeting, Bob was impeached by several disgruntled uncles from the family, who joined forces to strip him of his position as chairman. He was so overwhelmed with anger on the spot that he suffered a stroke and was hospitalized. The James family fell apart. An era came to an end. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window in my office, looking at the news on my phone with calm eyes. No joy, no sorrow. This was always a predetermined outcome. Just then, my phone received a text message from Simon Powell. I lost. I accept defeat wholeheartedly. Jenny, I wish you a bright future. I casually deleted the text message. A bright future. My journey is to the stars and the sea, and here, it's just the beginning. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.